We're going to go ahead and continue on with our media availabilities this afternoon at Pocono Raceway. We are now joined by Danny Stockman, crew chief of the number 27 Menards Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing, and Richard Childress Racing competition director, Dr. Eric Warren. Sorry. Danny, I understand that this will be your first week with the number 27 Sprint Cup Series team, so why don't you just talk about moving up to the Sprint Cup Series and expectations for this weekend with Paul Menard?
Well, definitely not much time to prepare and all that stuff. We kind of just had a couple days at the shop to get ready to come to Pocono, and to be quite honest with you, it was more about dealing with the people this week and making sure that the people were pumped up and excited and ready to go compete. You know, it's important that the people are behind you from the start, and it's important that they are 100% ready to go to battle, as Eric Warren talks to us about. We need to take this 27 team and get them uplifted, get them really pumped up, and we need to make a difference this second half of the season, and that's what the last 3 days has been. Obviously very, very excited for the opportunity that everybody has given me and everything, and it's been fun. We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to making a difference in the performance side of things, and we'll see how it fares here.
All right, and Dr. Warren, just talk about the decision in moving Danny from the Xfinity Series, what you've seen in him as a crew chief in the Xfinity Series, to now having him in the Sprint Cup Series with your team.
You know, I think in this position, the first thing you're trying to look at is the performance of the organization as a whole. And, you know, we've looked at the three team and the, success Austin has had compared to last year. And we're seeing kind of a improved performance in the 31. And we just look at the balance of our team, and, as has happened multiple times in the years, you look at the chemistry of the team, and, after a while you realize, all right, we need to do something to keep the performance up. Paul made the chase last year. We felt like it was one of his best years, but to be honest, the last part of the chase, we kind of struggled a little bit. It continued a little bit at the beginning of this year, and so, we're trying to win a race and get in the chase. It's not over until it's over, and we know the guys at RCR and the organization is continuing to bring great cars to the track, and we're working on some new improvements that hopefully show. And there's a few races left that we still feel like we can get in. And so, there's some discussion about thinking about it, Richard and I, and do we change in off season? What do we do here? And basically just to realize no time better than the present, give us as many races as possible. And we have a good organization. We got a lot of support, a lot of people that can help Danny, and Justin's been a great asset to RCR and will continue to be so in the future. So it's really about Paul and Danny, and they work well together on the Xfinity side, some of the races, and just kind of a natural progression.
All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to questions, and we'll start up front with Reed.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. Danny, given the relative suddenness and the adjustments that you have to make during this week, are you surprised to be on top of the speed chart after the first practice?
Definitely a little bit surprised. I knew that we were headed in the right direction a couple weeks. RCR as a whole, we don't like to suck, and we have been extremely we have been really, really digging hard as a company to not suck. I mean, it's not fun. Your people get beat down, and Eric and Richard and everybody at the shop we have all the tools to do this right. Well, we've got some new stuff that we've been working on as a company and everything, and it's never ending. We got to stay ahead of that curve, and I feel like right now, like I said, I'm new and I'm scanning through the pictures after practice and walking through the garage here, eyeballs wide open, looking at everybody's equipment, and we have all the stuff. Our stuff is there. It's competitive. We got to stay in front of the curve for the next change, and I feel like with Eric in charge of our company, he's going to make sure that we do that. It takes time for change. And Eric's been here, what, 3 years now? This is the fourth year. It takes a long time to put everything together and for it all to finally start coming into where it needs to come into. As far as today, it's pretty cool being on top of the board. We feel we know what it takes and the areas to look in to make speed, and we put it to work, and we'll see how qualifying goes.
All right, we'll go to Steve Post.
Danny, just listening to you and actually watching you, you talk about being on top of the speed chart, and you talk about those little things. You actually, as you said that, you held your fingers. How tough is it to keep working on those base hits, those getting that runner moving around? How challenging is it to do that when you are trying not to suck or trying to get away from where you are? How challenging is it to be patient and keep finding those things, like being the fastest car in practice today?
Well, you really have to believe in your people first off at the shop. With everybody being on the road so much, you can't go to the wind tunnel every week. You can't be at every single pit practice. You can't do a lot of things that's going on at the shop right now. But one thing you can do is listen to your people and listen to what they have to tell you in the areas to work in. And if you believe in your people and you believe in the direction that the company's headed, and you do those things that the information that they're providing you, and you perfect those little things, you're going to make speed. You can't leave one I undotted and one T uncrossed. It has to be all of it from start to finish, from your team being prepared, from the splitter being bolted on the car right to, 2/10 of air pressure. Everything has to be perfect at this level to compete with these guys. And I feel with the people I have around me, I feel that we can do it.
All right, we'll go to Lee Spencer.
LeeSpencerMotorsport.com. Eric, you guys changed your brakes, I believe, from the last time you were here, and it seemed to make a difference. I saw on the 3 in particular, he was talking a little bit about it. Can you talk about, the struggles you guys had earlier in the season with the brake package and what you brought here for Pocono?
I think, a lot of, as Danny said, you're trying to get every little piece of performance out of it. And then a lot of things you're trying to work on, like rotational weights and things like that. Early in the year, we were probably pushing the weight of the rotors a little bit too much, honestly. We have been looking at, as you always do, different companies, different technologies, who has the lightest weight, who has the best. And, the downforce, is less than last year. And so the braking requirements of some of these tracks, I think is continuing to surprise some people. Certainly we've seen that at Kentucky, even in a couple of things, and it'll obviously be worse, as we go into less downforce. So definitely made some errors there. I think we understand that a little bit, and hopefully we're past that. But it really was a combination of trying to push too hard on taking too much weight out of the rotors, but it bit us multiple times, actually. Well, we have a combination of AP and Brembo, so we actually have both.
All right, we'll go to Woody.
Woody came with them. And Danny, you mentioned having all the stuff and having all the tools that you need. You've had some success with Paul in the past on the Xfinity side. So how much of this, not just with you, but across the garage, do you feel is chemistry related? And do you feel like that's overlooked a lot of times?
Yeah, definitely chemistry. I've obviously, most of you know, I've worked with the boys, both Dillon boys, my whole career until midway through last season and this season. And I'll be right honest with everybody. That's a stressful deal, working for the family. Eric can attest to that. And it's not easy. They are good race car drivers, but it's not easy working for family. And to be honest with you, when Paul gets in our Xfinity car or even today, like, it's weird. Like, it's all business. You're there to do a job. You're there to race. You're there to perform. And there's just not a lot of outside other stuff that's bothering you. All you're working on is trying to make the race car faster and give him the feel that he's after. So definitely Paul is really low key, kind of real mellow, and I'm the opposite. I'm pretty wound up, and you guys hear me on the radio and stuff, yelling, screaming, leaving pit road and all that stuff. But I think it takes a mixture of both of that to keep the balance even. You can't be too mellow and you can't be too amped up, or else things just don't work. But if a happy balancer, I think, works good.
All right, we'll go to Dustin Long.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Eric, obviously the last 6 weeks your organization's had at least one car finish in the top 10. That's a streak that is better than most teams, so obviously that's a step forward. But obviously this is a sport where you look at the results at the end of the day, who's winning top fives and things like that. This is an organization that hasn't won since 2013. Why is it taking so long, and when is, and the bottom line is when are you going to get there, going to be able to compete against the Toyotas, because obviously there's a big gap between them and a lot of teams, but it certainly seems like a more significant gap with them and your group.
Well, I think I'm going to tell you that we hope to win this weekend, so let's make that clear. That's what we shoot for, and certainly I think everyone understands the challenge. Certainly we want to get those wins. That's what we strive for. I think getting back up there in winner's circle is really going to take some of that weight off our shoulders. Obviously, we all go home on Sundays, and as everyone in the garage does, that's the hard part about this sport. There are 39 teams now that go home thinking about where they failed, basically. And so, certainly, I guess this will be my 20th season, and I have not quite seen the gap in performance that we're seeing this year with the Toyotas to some of the rest of the field. So, as an engineer, but also as a leader of a team, it kind of makes you step back and really trying to understand where that's at, and like Danny said, and we saw some glimpses of it, honestly, in the Xfinity Series. There's been just as much domination there, and a couple weeks ago we kind of came close there with Austin and those guys, and we kind of have a direction, I think, that's showing results on the racetrack, and it's up to us to prove it and finish it. Being fast in practice is great, from a morale point of view, but at the end of the day, it's not what this is about. It's about Sunday. And we'll see. We got a work cut out for us, but as everybody else does as well. But we're certainly not going to give up on it.
All right, thank you two for joining us here today, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
If I could have everybody's attention here in the media center, we are now joined by Kyle Busch, driver of the number 18 M&M 75th anniversary Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing, fresh off of his win in Indianapolis, where a lot of celebrating there, kissing the bricks. How's that taking that kind of momentum into Pocono?
It certainly is the best way to come to Pocono, being able to race the way we did last week at a flat 2.5-mile racetrack, really similar to Pocono, but yet still way different. So, the challenges that we faced last week are entirely different than the challenges we'll face this week. So, all in all, just really excited about being able to score our second Brickyard 400 victory 2 years in a row. That was pretty special as well, and being able to back up our performance from last year. So looking forward to some great things the rest of the year, hopefully, and being able to knock Pocono off the list. That's the next thing that's holding us back here this weekend. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. We're going to start here on the right with Claire and work our way around. Thank you.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. A lot of the drivers in here have been talking about the restarts, and you're so good at restarts. I would put you in the higher category in that area. So I wonder, trying to knock this one off, if you think that will be a big part of it, and what else you think maybe that you had been missing that you hadn't won here yet?
Yeah, restarts are huge here for sure. Just, having the restarts with the long straightaway here, getting down into turn one, you can fan out pretty wide, and having the opportunity to stay single file obviously allows you to go down a straightaway faster, but when everybody fans out, it definitely manipulates the runs of the different grooves, the different lanes. So it's a bigger challenge here than maybe some other racetracks, but you file down into about 2 lanes if you're lucky through turn one, but more times than not, you'd like to be single file through there. So, it's tricky here for sure with the restarts, and they play a big role to what this race ends up being. There's been a lot of things, I guess, over the years that have kept us from winning here. Restarts, I would say, is probably one of those. Fuel mileage last year, we were leading coming to the white, or took the white flag leading and ran out. So, there's just variables that have eliminated our opportunity from winning here, and we just got to put it all together. It's no different than any other week. You got to have everything fall into place and the stars align, and it just hasn't quite happened here yet.
Go next to Bob, and then into the back to Pat.
Bob Pockris, ESPN. NASCAR announced this week that there'll be some changes to the floorboard and footbox areas to the cars for plate races next year and then all races 2018. Are you familiar with what the new rules are? Or do you agree kind of with what the direction NASCAR is going? And is there any chance of teams actually implementing these when they're not mandatory, or does the weight shift from the new materials or new thickness kind of prohibit you from doing it when it's not mandatory?
Yeah, so I'm about 90% sure of all the changes that are coming, and I'm for it, of course. Anything that's safety driven and that's going to help the driver's cockpit area stay intact in a crash. Obviously, there's some debate as to whether or not stiffening up the cars make them too stiff when we crash, and you don't have the opportunity to absorb the crash itself through the car. Like Indy cars, we would all say that those cars absorb the crash, obviously, but I feel like with our advancements in the safer barriers that we're trying to make sure that the walls absorb our crashes and the cars stay intact for the drivers, so we don't have injuries like we saw with myself or could potentially have seen with Austin Dillon's crash. So, I think it's a positive thing. I certainly think it's good for our cars, for our drivers, to keep us safe. I feel as though that these changes, I doubt you'll see teams implementing them into their cars too early before they're mandatory. It just doesn't make sense to us. Obviously, we're all competitors, and we're going to build cars to the capabilities that we know how to make them as fast and as light and as low and everything as possible. So if they would implement a rule where you make all these changes and you're able to run your car 25 pounds light, then we would all do it right away, But adding weight to the cars and then being able to take that weight back out is going to be a challenge for some of these teams. So it's going to be a bit tricky.
Okay, we're going to go to Pat and then to Joseph here.
Pat DeCola, NASCAR.com. What are your thoughts on how the 17 rules package from an aero standpoint is starting to shape up? And do you feel like that benefits your driving style at all?
I guess the quote-unquote 2017 package is what we've run at Michigan, Charlotte All-Star Race, Kentucky. So, I'm for it. I think it's a positive. I feel as though the last couple years we moved in a direction where we were adding downforce to the cars, and I would say that it wasn't necessarily putting on a better show. The cars were, let's, for a lack of a better term, call it too easy to drive, and it was too hard to pass. So now you're taking downforce away, and I feel like you're giving more opportunity to the drivers, the good drivers, to showcase their talent and put themselves farther towards the front of the field and not get trapped in or stuck behind other cars or drivers that aren't quite as good or as capable of being able to run towards the front. So it does create passing, given the opportunities, and does levy itself more towards what the drivers have been asking for.
Joseph Walken, frontstretch.com. You now have 66 wins across all three divisions in your career. What do you feel like your legacy is at this point in your career?
I'm not worried about that. It's not over yet. I got a long ways to go. So hopefully it's one that would be hard to beat, and that it's one that will be remembered. So we'll just keep fighting for more wins. We're not done yet.
Go to a gentleman here on the right, the camera.
Ross Lippman, ABC 27 News. Perhaps compounding for the challenges for you this weekend is having Jeff Gordon back in the field. No one's been more successful at this track than him. Have you noticed a difference in sort of the atmosphere surrounding him being back, given the circumstances, as he replaces Dale?
I would say within the media and maybe some fans having more opportunity to see Jeff Gordon again, that's kind of the difference. But as far as drivers or on the racetrack or people within the garage area, the team members, the guys that work each and every weekend, I haven't seen much difference. Obviously it's pretty cool that he has the opportunity to come out of retirement. I know he never used the R word, that he was retiring, but that's why I kind of find it a little funny that he's back again racing. But it's neat to have him here, of course, and hoping that they have a good solid run. I mean, last week I felt like I never saw him on the racetrack, so obviously he did a pretty good job. I never had an opportunity to I led the most laps, so I never have an opportunity to get back in traffic to race with him at all. So we'll see what happens here this weekend.
Go next to Brant, and then to Scott, and then to Jerry.
Brant James, USA Today Sports. Kevin Harvick is without his regular crew chief this weekend. You were in that situation at Dover. What are the biggest obstacles to having a normal competitive weekend in that situation?
I think the biggest obstacles is just the communication with the crew chief. You know, when we're either at the car or we go to the hauler and we talk and have our discussions about how the car is handling, he can read it in my face, he could see it in my eyes, you know, and he can understand my tone and being able to figure out exactly how loose I am or how tight I am or what I'm talking about within the car. And he has the opportunity to see it visually go around the racetrack and also to be within the team and be there within the guys and having the opportunity to work with them with the computer simulations and stuff like that right off firsthand. So I feel like that's all the biggest thing that you kind of miss out on when you don't have your crew chief here on the weekend.
Scott, and then we'll wrap up here with Jerry.
Scott Walsh from the Scranton Times-Tribune. Kyle, can you talk a little bit about the digital dashboards? You use them in the Cup Series, but you don't have them when you run an Xfinity or the trucks. Can you just kind of compare and contrast? Do you have a preference, one over the other, benefits, distractions, that kind of thing?
I think that the digital dash is good. I feel as though, I get all the same information just in a cleaner way through the digital dash. The other way of all the different gauges, obviously, you got to read a needle and stuff like that. So with the digital dash, other guys have it formulated where they still have the needle, but I just have it where it's written out. Boom, done. Tell me a number. I don't want to find where it's at. So it's just driver preference, just different things. I mean, I've seen a lot of different gauges or dash layouts, the digital dash layouts, and how people want it and what they see on it. I've heard other drivers use multiple pages of the dash, some for pit road and some for more information about volts and fuel pressures and stuff like that. So mine's pretty neat and tidy and clean. I don't need too much information.
Jerry Jordan, Performance Racing Network and Kicking the Tires. I didn't get to talk to you at Watkins Glen. You were doing double duty in the TRD car and your car. Can you talk about what you may have learned from both of those that you can bring over for next weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the TRD car was just the wheel force car, so it's already at a disadvantage with all the weight on that thing. It's overweight from what our race cars are, and the guys over there with TRD and their test team do a really good job of having the resources that we do to be able to go out there and run some runs that we get to run. You're only able to make one, maybe two laps at most because everything just gets so hot in those cars because you're producing too much heat through the wheel force transducers and whatnot. That might be a big word, I'm not sure. But it's, they're set up the same. They've got all the same components and everything. So you're just out there just trying to simulate a lap as best as you can. And even in that car too, you're not allowed to hit the curbs. So like through the bus stop, you really got to be ginger through the bus stop and not bounce off all the curbs as you would normally with your race car, just because it'll just send all the sensors crazy. So, it's a neat piece to get to drive and have an opportunity to learn from, but it's not for me to stare at a computer screen and figure it all out. Those guys do a good job at that.
With your car, did you pick up something that you can't carry over?
With our car, with our normal car, yeah, I mean, for sure. We learned a lot of things, I feel like, last week at the Watkins Glen test. We learned that the track isn't quite as fast as we had expected it to be. It's probably tire limited. You get a chance to slide around a little bit still. It seems like the slip of the cars is still the same as what it was last year. But speeds, we'll see if they increase more when we get back there with getting more rubber down on the racetrack, having more cars, more series there, and seeing what all that lays out for all of us for the weekend.
Kyle, really appreciate you stopping by, and good luck this weekend.
Thanks.
We are going to continue on with our media availability here today at Pocono Raceway with Joey Logano, driver of the number 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford for Team Penske. We'll just go ahead and open up the questions. If you have any questions, we'll get a mic to you. We'll start here with Rick.
Hey, Joey. Rick Pennell with Charlotte Observer. This morning, Brad was saying that he thought that you and Kyle were probably neck and neck as far as the best in the sport at restarts. And one of the things he talked about was what a big deal he thinks restarts have become since the double file starts. Could you talk a little about, has that become sort of a small refined art, a sort of a specialty?
For sure. There's a lot of opportunity on restarts to go either way. It can go good or it can go really bad really quick. So really, it's something I study a lot. For each racetrack, it takes something different to be successful on a restart. It takes a lot of time talking with your crew chief, understanding what you need in your race car to be able to make some of the moves you need to make. But like Brad said earlier, I'm assuming from what you said, they're very, very important, and it's a big challenge. Everyone's trying to make up as much as they can, and especially here at Pocono, this is one of those racetracks that is you have a long straightaway before you get down to turn one, and there's usually only about 2 lanes that are really worth anything when you get there. And so there's a lot of side drafting and pulling each other back, and 3, 4 wide, sometimes 5 wide, going into turn one, and you got to find a hole to get in there, and it becomes very challenging. And you don't want to be the guy that's left out. A lot of times the aggressor is the one that wins out on that thing, but sometimes the aggressor is the one that gets maybe puts himself in the wrong spot. So it's a calculated decision on each restart, on knowing who you're racing, the tendencies they've had in the past, what racetrack you're at, and kind of putting all that together to make the decisions on the restarts, on making these moves, because it becomes so challenging to pass afterwards. When you talk about here or Indy or really most racetracks we go to, it's very hard to pass these days, and the opportunities on the restart. So, it's push hard, and it's that way across the board. Every driver is doing that. It's just a matter of doing it in the right way.
And go back to Dom, and then up front.
Dominic Otago on the RacingExperts.com. When you look at the last 4 races here for your 3 top 5 finishes, how much do you and your team look into those kind of numbers coming to a race weekend like this?
None. That's the first I heard it. So I should answer your question. We don't really look at the stats, and something Roger Penske says all the time is don't trip over your press clippings. That would be the perfect example of that. I think you can kind of get lost in the stats sometimes and think you're better than what you are at a particular racetrack or whatever it may be. So it's important for us to be able to remember how we ran last time, yes, and learn from our mistakes and where we can be better. But that's in the history, right? That's in the past. It's gone. We need to focus on how we can make more top 5s and more wins. And I feel like we got a car that can do that this week.
Come up.
Joey, Rich Colbert, the Motor Racing Network. Getting away from the track just a little bit. The Summer Olympics start in just about a week. Is that something you get into, and is there a particular event that you like?
I love the Olympics. I love seeing the emotion of the athletes, and I really don't care what sport it is. I think I've learned over the years as an athlete to appreciate the amount of time and effort they put into it. And it's fun to watch athletes that don't get to compete as much as we do in the limelight, right? It's once every 4 years. They're getting a shot at it once every 4 years. And we get to race Daytona 500 every year. This is their 500 or their championship, and they only get a shot once every 4 years. And I think understanding that pressure that they get put under to do that and be able to, succeed and really perform under that type of pressure is very impressive to me. Because you mess up, you think about it for 4 years, so it's definitely, it's amazing to see how they prepare and watching their interviews and how they talk, and I can learn a lot from that, and I think that's something I really enjoy more than the actual event itself. I like trying to figure out how I can make myself better and learning about way athletes from different sports are able to do that and prepare themselves for the biggest event of their career.
We're going to go with the back to Pat.
Pat Nicola, NASCAR.com. There may be some out there, but I've yet to hear drivers say that they aren't on board with where NASCAR is going with the aero package. Why is that? And, is this something that all drivers really want?
For sure. I think the Driver Council is something that's really helped us communicate to NASCAR, and NASCAR really accepts what we've been doing over there, and I think it's definitely open lines of communication, which is great. Is it they do everything we say? No, of course not, and it probably shouldn't be. We need to get everybody's opinion, right? We got to get the owners, we got to get the drivers, we got to get the tracks, everyone's got a council these days. So everyone needs to be able to agree on things before we can move forward on stuff. But it is nice for the drivers to come together as one voice and be able to communicate what we want. So it's definitely, there's a lot of layers on how we do that, and how we communicate, and then communicate that to NASCAR. And I think we've seen some things get pushed through that it's going to be good for our sport. And I think when you look at the low downforce, to answer your question, yeah, I don't think there's really any drivers that want it the other way. It's just, I think we've proven, this year is better racing than last year. And I think, I think even with the 17 package with a couple refineries or whatever it may be, can be even better than this package. The ultimate goal is to, be behind a car and not affect your car. It's always going to affect your car, but if you can do it at the minimum amount, it's going to be better racing for everybody to watch.
Additional questions for Joey Logano? We'll go up there to Scott.
Scott Walsh from the Scranton Times Tribune. Joey, can you talk a little bit about the using the digital dashboards this year and everything? What you think of them, preferences, especially too because you run sometimes in the Xfinity Series where they don't have them.
Right. So they're quite a bit different than what we're used to. I think for years you're used to using the as a spec gauge is what they were called, and they're able to run all your pit road lights on it. There's advantages and disadvantages of the dash. I think the dash itself is something cool. It brings us more towards the modern era with the way the street cars are today. I think that's a good thing. Challenges that we have is pit road stuff. A lot of times it's a little delayed, is what ends up happening on your dash because it has to go through, from what I understand, it has to go through some kind of processor and this and that. And then I don't know. I'm not a computer guy, but whatever it is, it's delayed to what your actual speed is. So trying to understand that is taking a different technique inside the race car to maximize your pit road speed, which is it's a massive challenge. And like Kyle said, sitting in here earlier in the back and listening to Kyle, but there is a lot of different layouts and a lot of different ways you can do things. So you can be creative, which is kind of fun. It's different. It's nice. There's a lot more opportunity with it, I think, than what we used to have. So it's a step in the right direction. I think we can make them better for sure. Like anything, right? I mean, I'm always looking to make something better. That's what we should do is just people in society. But I think that is definitely a direction that's right for the sport. But there's another step that I think we can make it even better.
Good deal. Well, Joey, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and good luck this weekend here at the Tricky Triangle.
Great. Thanks, guys.
If I can have everybody's attention here in the media center, we are now joined by Kyle Larson, driver of the number 42 Target Chevrolet for Chip Ganassi Racing. And I know we're at the Tricky Triangle this weekend in Pocono, but before we talk anything about the racing this weekend, you took part in something really special in Greenbrier. Can you tell us what you did there?
Yeah, earlier this week, well, actually before that, Denny Hamlin and I, Denny had approached myself about if there was any possible way that we could help out through Target with the floods that have gone on or had happened there in West Virginia. So we got in touch with Target, and they were going to allow us to go shopping for a bunch of toys. So Denny and I, earlier this week, we went and bought close to $3,000 worth of toys. And yesterday we went to the Greenbrier there, and you got to deliver toys a lot of kids. So that was really cool. A lot of their families and stuff have lost everything, homes, family members. I know there was quite a few people that had died from the floods and stuff. So to be able to contribute just a little bit, with toys and see the smiles on some of the kids' faces was pretty special. I know the Greenbrier and that whole community means a lot to Denny, so it was pretty neat to help out, and pretty awesome that Target stepped up to let us do that.
Well, we really appreciate you doing it. It really puts things in perspective. Let's
Thanks.
open the floor to questions. If you have a question, we'll get a wireless microphone to you. So raise a hand. We'll get you a wireless microphone. We'll start up here with Richard.
Rich, I'm in and out here. Rich Colbert, Motor Racing Network. The Summer Olympics start in about a week. Is that something that you've gotten into? And if so, is there a particular event that you like?
No, I mean, I don't know if great answer, but no, I haven't ever really been in the Olympics too much. I don't watch a ton of TV, so and our lives are so busy already. It's hard to keep up with it. Winter time, you don't really have a whole lot going on. So when it's the Winter Olympics, I can kind of pay attention a little bit more and follow along. But as far as Summer Olympics go, I may catch highlights and stuff, but I don't follow it a whole lot. But obviously, you want to root for the United States to win as many gold medals as I can.
Go next to Dustin and here to Zach.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Kyle, Tony Stewart was talking last night that he mentioned the first year or so on the Drivers' Council that you were real quiet, and talked about how, I guess, a while back he kind of said something to you about the kind of speaking up about that. Can you, I guess, kind of talk about what it means to kind of the guidance of somebody like that, and how your comfort level maybe is growing, or how it's kind of evolved in being in the Drivers' Council and speaking up more?
I mean, I would still say I'm pretty quiet. But I guess I speak up a little bit more. I think, last year was only my second year in Cup anyway, so I still didn't really have an understanding or never even thought of, stuff to make the sport better. So now, third year in Cup, I've obviously gained more experience each week as a driver and as a person. So, and as the older you get, I guess you notice more things just outside of driving a race car on the race weekend. So, Tony gave me a talking to, I guess. I mean, it wasn't anything, serious, but, since then, I guess, I've had more of a voice and not hold back on opinions, I guess. A lot of times, we all may not agree on one thing, but it's good to get your opinion out there anyways and get people thinking about it.
Are you talking, when you're speaking up, are you talking more about, are you kind of talking more about racing things, more things about the now, or are you kind of looking at things further down the road because,
Personally, for me, it's probably more just racing related stuff. We're still, it's hard for me to pay attention to how many security guards are out there or stuff like that I don't really, I don't get bombarded like Dale Jr. and Tony Stewart might. So that stuff doesn't quite, I don't pay attention to it a whole lot.
We'll go to Zach and then up front to Lee.
Zach Sterniola with the Pocono record. Obviously coming off the top 5 last week, Indy, this has been a pretty decent track for you. Do you feel like you can build off of that momentum from last week as you head into this week at Pocono?
Yeah, for sure. Pocono and Indy are two different racetracks compared to the rest of the racetracks we go to, but the two, compared to each other, they're somewhat similar. Obviously they're still different, but they're the closest to each other. We ran good there last week, so hoping to be competitive again this week. The asphalt's different, more banking, stuff like that. So it's hard to go there or come here after running good last week and expect to run top 5 again. But that's what we hope for, and we're definitely working hard at that. We had a quick first practice. We only got one short race run in there with them working on the weepers through turn 2 and off of turn 1, and then did a few qualifying runs. So I didn't think we were great in qualifying trim, but race trim I think we'll be okay.
We'll come up front to Lee, then to Dan, and then to Brandt.
Lee Spencer, Motorsport.com. What are your plans for Knoxville?
My plans for Knoxville is hopefully flying there next Sunday after Watkins Glen. I'll race Monday at Oskaloosa. Then we're off Tuesday. I think my prelim night's on Thursday. So I'll race Thursday. Hopefully I am good enough in points so I don't need to race Friday. And hopefully I'm dethroning Donnie Schatz on Saturday. I'm racing for Paul Silva. I ran quite a bit for him the past 3 years. Or whenever I do run a wing sprint car, it's only for him. He's from Sacramento, California, where I grew up. He takes care of Rico's sprint car stuff. Paul Silva's probably the top 3 best crew chief out there. He's made his living doing it, working hard, so I always enjoy racing for him, and he's got a really good resume at Knoxville, so we should be pretty good.
Good to Dan.
Dan Gelston, the Associated Press. Kyle, were you surprised that Target dropped out of Chip's IndyCar program, and what have you been told about what might happen beyond next year?
Well, yeah, I guess surprised. They've been with Chip for so long now, but things change and business models change and stuff like that. But they'll be back on our car next year, so looking forward to that and hoping to get them back into victory lane. It's been a long time since they've been to victory lane in NASCAR, but they're the greatest sponsor out there. They've done so much for Chip, so much for me. Think the world of them, and just hoping for good success for the rest of the.
Do you get any sense that next year might be it for Target?
I don't know. I'm more just worried about racing right now, so that's more of the business people in the shop to worry about rather than me.
Brant James, USA Today Sports. Harvick is without his crew chief this weekend, and you were in a similar situation earlier this year and had a good finish, I think third. What are the obstacles to having a normal and productive, in your case, weekend without the regular crew chief?
Well, they're still really heavily involved on the race weekend. So other than just not seeing them, it's honestly, to me, didn't feel too different. You still get to communicate with them quite a bit while they're gone. And obviously Kurt Busch did fine with it. So once you get to the race part of it, I don't think you notice a whole lot of change. So I'm sure Harvick will be just as fast as he always is. So I don't know. It's not a huge deal. It is always nice to have your crew chief here, but when they're gone, all these teams are so prepared already that somebody can fill in for a week, I think.
Any additional questions for Kyle Larson? Kyle, really appreciate you taking the time to come in and join us today, and thanks again for what you did in Greenbrier.
Thanks.
Yeah.